Welcome to What's on Your Bookshelf, a life and leadership podcast where we live out loud the pages of the books that are on our shelves, with your host, Denise Russo and Sam Powell.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of What's on Your Bookshelf. This is our life and leadership podcast where we're living out loud the pages of the books that are on our bookshelves. My name is Denise Russo. My friend and co-host is Sam Powell, and together we are starting our next book of the year. I'm excited to introduce this book. We did an intro session last week to tell you what the book was all about. But Sam, how about we get started and tell a little bit more about what we're doing today? And by the way, I'm just happy to be here with you. So I'm going to let you tell us about Let Them.
Yeah, I'm super excited about this. So this is Let Them Theory by Mel Robbins, which if you spend time in the space of books that we do, you've probably seen her. She has a really highly rated podcast. And I was really excited to pick up this book because this is like an instant bestseller. Like and in this first chapter that we'll get into, she talks about like where the theory came from and how she ended up sharing it. And it is really one of those things. I was reading one of the chapters this morning. I was having my coffee, sitting on our deck, reading this. It's a beautiful, beautiful morning here. And as I'm reading it, all I could think about was 3 people I wanted to hand this book to. I almost called my aunt because I was like, I feel like you will love this book. But then I realized it was like 8 o'clock in the morning. I was like, I know she's awake, but that feels a bit early. So I think it's one of those books that if this isn't a realization you've had yet in your life, I think this will change your life for the better. And if this is something that you've either slowly been reckoning or have already reckoned, I think it will really help organize your thoughts around it. And I feel like I fall more into the second camp here because it was one of those things like I've come into this book super skeptical. And I think it's because I let the online internet world sort of mess with me, because as soon as you put anything out there, there's going to be haters and people are like, let me tell you why this is wrong. And all they've done is read the title of the book half the time, right? Not really gotten into what it is. So there's a lot out there on this one. This one is good, but as I'm reading it, I find my skepticism just getting chipped away, because Mel really did it's such human experience. I think she's gone through in everything all of the books that she's published, right? She had an experience. She worked through it, found a little thing that worked for her, shared it in the world. It resonated with other people deeply. And then she went out and did the research. Like, she's a lawyer by trade back in the day. And so she knows how to do research, right? And now she's got this huge platform. And so she's worked with a lot of psychologists and, all sorts of people as she researched this book to understand why does it work, right? Like, that was really the question for the publishing of the book. She shared the idea and the theory out there in the world. And as I'm reading it, I find myself sitting in this, I've never come across this in a book before, of like this interesting space of like, okay, yes, but what about this next part? What about this next thought? What about that next piece you should take this to, that I know as a coach, as somebody who deals with human behavior all of the time, and then give it 3 pages. And she's like, and here's this next part. I'm like, oh, there it is. So I don't know how many times that I was just like, this keeps happening over and over to get in this book. And like, it's making me kind of fall in love with it in a way I really wasn't expecting.
Yeah, I think that she is very interesting. And I also was skeptical before I started reading the book, mainly because she seemed like this person that just suddenly got famous. And she got famous by interviewing other people. And she seemed to be like, maybe like an Oprah pick or something like that, where you just think, is this even real?
Mm-hmm,
and I love that she tells her stories where you can feel like she is just talking to you over a coffee and you can get what she's saying. And then everything that she says about how she got like the light bulb turn on is not anything that you'd be like, whoa, I never would have thought of that. It's just like super common sense that's not commonly applied.
Right, right. And I think that that's probably what makes this so approachable to so many people is that like she's just out here living her life, struggling through the struggles, like working through like she's just a normal person
Yeah.
who happens to be really good at sort of distilling things down into something simple, right? And that maybe that's the lawyer in her, right? Of being able to like make the argument, pull all these complicated pieces, and then convince right somebody that this is something. But like I think that's sort of the magic of this. It is the commonality of her and the like anybody could like you could have written this book, I could have written this book type of a thing, but it's this magic of being able to distill this down into something so tangible that's easy to use. And I was worried, like, I always worry about oversimplification of things because if
Yeah.
you oversimplify, it makes it usable, but also you get a lot of people misusing it. And she addresses that as we go here through this book. And so as we're starting chapter 1 here, this is stop wasting your life on things you can't
Mhm.
control. And, she really starts this out of like, I don't know, basically describing herself as like a people pleaser. It's like what I wrote it down. I was like, you make the mistake of thinking you can say the right thing, everyone will be satisfied. And I think that's a really human experience that we all go through, right? We want to feel connected to other people. We want to do that. And so we tend to spend a lot of energy on like, how do I make other people happy? How do I make somebody like me? Anybody who's been through middle school knows that feeling, right?
Use, I don't know, Sam, when I was reading this part from her being a people pleaser, I think that there's people that don't consider themselves people pleasers, but still fall into the same trap because you want to get people to like you or understand you or just include you, or you want them to change because you want them to think what you're thinking or believing or saying or doing, or you want them to meet your expectation. Like we were just talking off mic. I have to say, first of all, if you're listening to this, I wish that you really could have time to hear what we talk about before we record, because I love talking with you. And we talk about so many things that we don't get into this little 30-minute segment. And some of it I think, oh man, we should have pushed record, or we should be able to share those things that will maybe go into the atmosphere. But we were talking about how if you aren't in sync with whoever, your partner, your friend, your coworker, your kids, etc., we tend to want that person to be along with us. That's natural, right? You want the person to go where you want to go, do what you want to do, think how you want to think. But the beauty of diversity is that's just not how it works. And so she says in this first chapter that even though this book is about letting people be themselves, that it really isn't. It's really about the problem isn't other people. The problem is ourself, and the deeper
Yeah.
insight is the frustration that we get with our belief that somebody should be doing something different than their own lived life experience in their body while they're living, even if they're in our space. And so I circled on the first page that I really resonated when she said that no matter what you do, you can work harder, bend further, shrink yourself smaller, and still someone's going to come away disappointed. And no matter how hard you try, it's never enough. And I feel that way frequently, that I can't please everybody all the time. And I don't even know. It's probably an Abraham Lincoln quote or somebody famous that said something like, if you can't please everybody all the time, at least please some of the people some of the time.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that like as our world has gotten so big, with the internet and, like you can find anything, you can talk to anyone from any walk of life, really, that we, it's hard to reconcile that as a human being hardwired for connection because we, we are wired for like the social aspect. Like I read this really interesting piece of research one time that really talks about, and I think I mentioned this last time, that like connection isn't an option for humans for overall real health. Like we suffer when we don't have the connections that we need, right? It's like why people talk about a loneliness epidemic and like all of this stuff and all this dialogue and all these feelings that we're wrestling with right now, kind of collectively, because the online world makes things big so that one, I can't please everybody. There's absolutely no way. Ask anybody who has a big platform on the internet. Like their comments are filled with just as many haters as they are lovers, right? Like it's it's you cannot please everybody in this world. And we've never in any other time in history had access to this many people, right? Normally you would have just the people you physically come across in a day, right? The people you work with, physically, the people you go to the grocery store with, you live around, right? Like it's our world was a lot smaller. And so there was this natural social dynamic of figuring out, what does this group look like? How do I fit into it? What does this do? And there's so much goodness in expanding it out, because people who don't necessarily fit in the place that they were born can find the people elsewhere and know that there's, hope of better things, bigger things in a different space. But it also makes it too big to where we are trying to feel like we want to fit in with the collective of humanity. And that's not possible, but we are hardwired for connection just as much as we need food and water and oxygen and things like that. We also need connection. We do not thrive as human beings without it. And so this natural tendency to want to fit in, to want to, we call it people pleasing a lot, but again, like you said, people don't realize that's what that is. But this this want to, have things work with the group and fit in, and all of this is very, very natural. And so this isn't about like fighting against any of that. It's about understanding that you can't control anything outside of yourself, which we did a ton of work on last year when we were looking at The Obstacle is the Way, and and the other books and things like that. But it's it's a great, like I think it's a very human experience that we start this book with.
She talks about how the whole point of this is that there's this theory that she made up, which is called the let them theory, which is about what you're describing, which is supposed to be that if you can get this right, it will free you from the burden of she says, trying to manage other people. But I think it's freeing you from the burden of thinking other people are going to be exactly like you. And I think social media has done a terrible job at getting people's emotions all in a twist. Like there's things that happen every single day in the media that are just crazy, whether it's government, whether it's corporate, whether it's your friendship circle, whether it's people that you maybe haven't even talked to since you were in elementary school that suddenly say something and you're just like, well, why did that person say that or think that, or how can they live that way? And so you obsess on what other people think. And she says that if you obsess on what other people think, say, or do, that's the problem. But if you can let it go, so maybe the book should have been called Let It Go, because letting it go
very frozen.
Yeah, very frozen, very unfrozen, like unfreeze yourself from this, because you drive yourself crazy with it. So I love in the second part of this first chapter that she was talking about, Sam, that if you can get to the point of realizing that people don't have any power over you unless you give it to them, that's the freeing thing. I'll give an example. It's like I've been dealing with trying to be in 5 places at the same time to try to please everybody that needs a part of me for something, personally and professionally, in my own household and in my extended household. There's somebody that needs something from me. And in being able to be everything for everybody, I have had some times recently where I've lost the ability to be for myself. And I ended up a couple of weeks ago deciding this one day, no, I'm not going to be able to do everything because it's burning me out. And I literally went and I get peace being outside and being by the water. And I was only maybe by the water for a very short time, 10 or 15 minutes. And at the end of it, Sam, I felt like I had been there for days in a good way, because I just needed to find that place and that space to let myself be who I am and let go of everything else for just that little brief period of time. It seems like then that goes away and it gets right back to the thing. And so maybe this book will help me get out of that cycle of falling back to feeling like, oh my God, I just need this respite to not feel like I'm making everybody else feel like I let them down.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that that's such a common experience, right? And I think especially as parents, moms especially, I think collectively sort of feel this way, like, let me give and give and give and all these bits and pieces of myself out in the world. And And at the end is like, is that really what we want to do? Like I don't know. There's so many stories that I hear about women who like do, what you're describing of like, everybody needs a piece of me. And so let me give all of that. And then there's nothing left for me. But then when the phase of life changes and everybody launches out of the house and I'm left with just me and my partner,
Yeah.
we've become strangers. And I don't even know who I am. I don't know what I like. I don't know what I want. I don't know what that looks like. And I think I'd heard so many of those stories growing up. And I also have the terrible and unique experience, right, of like having a child and losing that child suddenly. and and as I'm reading this book, I was thinking about like I live this let them theory already in a lot of ways. And so I kept thinking like what made me do this, like this let going of control and things like this. And it's funny, like she describes this as like the tight grip that I had on life started to loosen up after she started to have this idea of like, just let my family be late to absolutely everything we go to, right? Let them leave dishes in the sink, let my relatives be judgmental, let them be sold out of bagels at the bakery. Like it's like just this let them theory is the release of control, right? The release of this tight grip that she had on life. And I like that resonated with me so deeply because I've lived that life, like trying to hold on so tightly to everything. And one of my fundamental beliefs in life, and I wrote it down and I highlighted that and I wrote this down is like, human beings are wired, and she then eventually gets into this in this chapter of like, we are wired for wanting control. But the reason that we want control is because what we are fundamentally chasing in life is security, safety. You can use whatever word you want there, but like we need to be safe. We want to survive, and to survive, we have to feel safe. And the way to feel safe is to control the environment as much as possible. And so it is a very natural human thing for us to want control, but we overdo it, right? We want everyone to be safe, everyone to be, and I think parents can resonate this. Like we want our kids to be so safe. And so we try to wrap them up in a little bubble. We become the helicopter parent where we're like, okay, don't do this. And I hear myself doing it with Austin all the time. I want him to be safe. I've lost a child. I want my children to be safe because I don't ever want to experience that pain again. And so there are times, and I've had to do so much work in myself on the other side of loss to realize that I've got to let go of that sense of control. I cannot control everything that happens to my son in his life, to my daughter in her life. And it's that release. And it was so interesting listening to this and this description because I've lived this and I can understand why this resonates so deeply. And there's like 3 pages of tattoos in this first chapter where people have let them tattooed on their body. Because I think that we all experience that like need for safety and security. And so we lean into trying to over control things. And at some point, something happens in our life and we realize we got to let it go. And when we let it go, there is so much relief and so much work. And there's a lot of work. There's a lot of inner work to do to get to that point. But it's a beautiful thing on the other side. Like it's a beautiful thing to be like, okay, so my son's not prepared for this thing we have to go to. Like, let him experience. He has to experience the pain of unpreparedness so that he knows how to be prepared later in life, right? Like we learn through those feelings of like, I don't want to do this again. And you gotta let them, right? And you have to be smart about it and safe about it. But like, same thing with other people, adult relationships I have in my life. Like, I gotta let them. If this is how they want to make this choice, you gotta like let them do it. Let them make the mistake because I can't control that. I can only control me and my reactions and my feelings about this. And like, I think that's really the beauty of this. And I think it's why it resonates with so many people.
One thing that I wonder is if this is like a change in generations or a change in culture, because my brother and I were talking about this, where when we were little, we lived in a town in Western New York where we knew everybody. Like our friends' parents, when they were younger, were friends with our parents when they were younger. It was like a community, probably similar to, where you are now. And I know you've moved around a lot, but that kind of idea of a place where people never leave.
Yeah.
And growing up, we never locked the door. My mom was always the entertainer, and kids would just walk in and there would be stuff to eat and and that would be the place you come. But my mom let us be kids. We would go out and there were no cell phones, there were no pagers, there were no social media trackers and GPS and air tags and this and that. We just would go play, and we knew what time we were supposed to come home, and we knew if we didn't come home that we were in trouble for not coming home. But I talked with my mom even about this with my brother at one time about, how did you let us do that? Because you are afraid now in our 50s for us to even leave you to go drive down the street to go to the houses that we live in with our grown families.
Yes.
But something about that time was like an innocent time where she could let us be who we needed to become. And she wasn't as afraid as I think as a society we are to just let our kids go out the front door. And you were talking even about parenting with your kids. She has this whole section in this first chapter where, as a mom, speaking as a mom, I can't speak as a dad, but speaking as a mom, when you are there for your baby from the time they're a baby until the time even that they're getting ready to finish high school, you are the one that can't let them just have it their own way, because you're trying to help them stay safe, but you're also trying to guide them and provide opportunities and be the minivan driving soccer mom or the baseball mom or the basketball mom. You are the one buying their clothes for them because they don't have a job to pay for things. And so the transition of letting that go is really hard. But she says that if you let people be themselves, then they will reveal like who they are. And you just have to get to the point where can you let that person stumble maybe or succeed maybe without your help and still be okay with both.
Yeah. And I think that's the hard thing with parenting. And you and I were talking about this before we started about like how, because your kids are in the launch phase, my kids are young. And so it's that I always tell you, one of my friends always tells me like bigger kids, bigger problems. And as you move through these phases, it's like, how do you create that space? And it's that always evolving, always changing, like, and the thing I tell my son all the time, right? He's a wild and crazy guy. And I always tell him, if you're going to do something dangerous, do it safely. And he always laughs at me when I say it, but he knows what I mean. Like, be smart about the risk you take. Be smart about climbing on that thing. Do you know you can do it, right? Like, are you going to be able to get yourself down? What does that look like? Assess the risk kind of a thing, but do it anyways. Like, live and experiment. And that's changes as kids get older and, and as we move through life, right? It's very different what I let a 3-year, like my 1-year-old do. Like, she can't even climb a couch by herself because she'll throw herself off of it and get, severely injured. And so it's, what does that look like? How does that evolve? How does that grow? And it's, you have to evolve, in that situation with it. And that part you're talking about where she says, like, people, when they behave a certain way, it exposes who they are, who their character is. And she was talking about in the form of like, so you go out on a few dates and somebody ghosts you and like, let them, because that is showing you who they are. And do you want to be with that type of a person? And like, all I could think about was like all over, the last 25 years of friendships I've had with people, because I don't know how many times I wanted to like shake a friend and be like, they are telling you who they are. You don't want that. Let it go. Like, let them go, because they're not aligned to where you want to be and what you're looking at and all that kind of stuff. But it's that clinging, right? It's that wanting to hold on so tightly to, the things that are going on. And it's like, I wish I could like cut this part out and send it backwards in time to like a few of the friends I've had to be like, they're telling you, they are showing you who they are. And so you've got to decide what you do with that from there.
I think the same applies at work, because you may want your coworkers or the people that report to you or your boss to be somebody who they're not. And this is really a much more freeing thing to think about what you just said, which is if you let the people be who they are and they reveal themselves on the plus side or the not plus side. John Maxwell says it like this: you're either always adding or subtracting from something in life. And if you can see the character of a person for what they are, then you can decide, is the investment of my limited time that I will never get back in my life best spent investing it in this project, in this job description, in this role at this company, in this culture with these people? Or is life too short and it really is time to think about what might it look like on this other side? I'm coaching this one person right now who is really good at their job. They like the type of work that they do. They are in the wrong culture. They are bucking up against a system where culturally this person doesn't have a match for how the senior leaders above them operate, what their values are. And they're not bad people. It's just different. It would be like, I'll give a different example that maybe people could resonate with. Like maybe you're somebody who is younger in your career and you want to have work-life balance, maybe have a child, maybe be able to work at home on Fridays, but the people above you are from a generation even above me who says, no, you have to be in an office, you have to be here from 8 to 5, you have to take a 1 hour lunch break, and you have to you have to work if I ping and ding you after work hours, and you're expected to always be on. Like that's just different culturally for some people, and especially for young people who are working across different generations of people in business right now, is you will not always be like everybody you work with, no matter what their age is. It's about the person's how they operate, and you have to just let them be that way and be okay with it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'd say too, like you're also allowed to let that change, right? The things I needed out of a space and a culture and a career at 27 were very different than at 37, and will be very different at 47 and 57 and 67 and however long, I'm in the workforce type of a thing, right? Like it's okay for that to change. And I don't think we pay enough attention to one, just that general feeling of, is this vibing with me? Is this aligned to what I want and need right now? And is it still aligned, right? Like it's that I always tell people to like do a check-in once a year at a minimum of like, is this still working for me? Like, right? What are the things that are really important? When I have career coaching clients, I have a values list that like a values exercise I run them through, and I make them look at like this list of, I don't know, 100 values and go through and like check all the ones that resonate with you, and then go through and like pull out the ones that are most important, and then the most important and the most important, until you're down to like 3 to 5. And it's funny, and like every single thing on the list is good. Like there's not a single wrong value. And like as I help people through it, I know in like these kinds of exercises that like what I would have picked at 25 is very different than what I would have picked at 30 after I had my son, which is very different than I would have picked at 35 when I had 2 kids, and 37 when, I was, going through that phase. And now like it would be different. So there's no wrong or right value, but you got to know that alignment. It's so, so, so important as you move through life, and in letting people be who they are, and like again, not with no judgment in it necessarily, like, hey, if that's what you value, that's what you value, like I'm going to let you do it. It gives you space. And that's what she talks about in this, is like once she let go of that control, once she let people be who they are, it gave her the space to look at what she wants, what she likes, what she is, right? It's the thing about parenting, right? You're trying to be everything for everybody, and you leave no space for yourself. But if you let go and loosen up a little bit, all of a sudden you have space to be like, well, what's something I enjoy, right? Like, I don't know how many people I know, like especially parents, that could not tell me what they like to do as a pastime, right? Like, give me one thing that you like to do just for you. And I know so many people who can't answer that question, right? It's like, oh, well, I spend my whole life, taking my kids around to things. And I love that. And it's like, of course you love that. But when your kids are gone, when they've moved on, what is it? Do you give yourself the space? And I think that's one of her arguments here with this theory, is that the let them theory gives you a little bit of space around yourself to think about, okay, well then what about me, right? What do I need, want, feel like, right? And once you do that, and once you give that space, then you can look at alignment. You can look at all the things that are so important to you.
She ends the chapter with what you just said, which is talking about let them and then let me, and that there's science behind this. So every book that we've explored together, we have shared that this isn't just touchy feely, happy clappy. There's science, psychology, neuroscience, fact based things that also go alongside these human sided stories of people that are trying to just navigate life. And so, as she talks about in the end, that if human beings are hardwired to need some sort of control, then maybe there's something more about how you can get to the place where you have more control over the things that you think and say and do and the results that you have in your life, like we always talk about. And I would be remiss if we didn't end this episode today, Sam, by saying two things to the listeners. One, you have some incredible, really useful and helpful exercises that you use as a coach. We also offered at the beginning of the year that we will continue to offer this whole year to give away free Agile Brain exercises. And I have to tell you, there's been like a new and elevated, not new and improved because it was already awesome, but an elevated component of Agile Brain, which is this assessment that looks at your subconscious layer of how you think about things and what are the things that drive you to want more of or less of in your life. And so they have done some significant, really cool research about how emotional intelligence is getting a facelift into something called motivational intelligence and the things that motivate the way that we live our lives. And so I do want to offer that alongside with this book, or if it's helpful for your teams, if you are at work, reach out to us. We have tools. We have DISC, which is a human behavior assessment tool. We've got these tools that you've created, Sam, not only for adults, but for young people, whether they're athletes or kids that are growing up and learning about themselves. And so we want to be able to hear from you if there's things that we can help you with outside of you hearing the stories of how we're living out loud these pages ourselves.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I'm really excited next time because as I was reading this first chapter, I was thinking about, okay, let them is good, but I feel like it's missing something. I feel like it's missing that, okay, once I let somebody, there's work to be done. Because I've walked this path. I've been this journey, done this journey of like, okay, how do I let go? But then what you're left with is work you've got to do on you, right? Like, okay, so what does this now reveal about me, right? Behavior reveals things. That's why I focus all my time on behavior, really, at the end of the day, is because it reveals what's happening. And when you alleviate and give yourself the little space by letting them, then you come around to this let me. What does that mean? What does that look like? And that's what we'll talk about next time. And it is the very important other half of this theory. And it's the part that I didn't know about in coming into this book. And I think it makes all the difference.
I agree with you. I'm looking forward to it next week as well, but we're out of time for today. So for this week, my name's Denise Russo. On behalf of my friend Sam Powell, before we go away, the links to this book will be in the show notes. Thanks for joining us on this episode of What's on Your Bookshelf.